All right, friends. I am Zach. I am a dungeon master, game master, storyteller, whatever other game setting I'm using. I run tabletop RPG games. If you didn't see my intro video, I've been. Well, first off, it's really easy to watch. You can, over here in a corner somewhere, you can just watch it. Super simple, just to kind of explain what this project is going to be like. But yeah, really, what you need to know is I am a dungeon master for D&D 5th edition. I've been playing for 3+ years. Both published adventures from Wizards of the Coast or someplace like DM's Guild, and also run my own homebrew campaigns. I am going to be doing a first look at the Pathfinder 2nd edition core rulebook today. I know Pathfinder by reputation and not by actually looking at the rules and studying it. So I kind of laid out what I expected, but I've got my notes app here open on the side. I have a PDF that I purchased directly from Paizo's web store. I like PDFs a lot. They're great. I do have a hard copy, but it would be hard to share that with y'all. So let's test this out and see what we got. First off, this is the cover. Super interesting. I love the art. We got a cleric, got maybe fighter or barbarian, dwarf, and looks like a rogue, most likely, double wielding. And I love this dragon design. Love that the dragon kind of has his wing claws. He's actually using his kind of extra claw here to kind of try to cram himself through this opening. Very, very cool. Title page, introduction. Love, man, this art looks fantastic. I'm super excited to check out the art. So we got intro, ancestries, and backgrounds. So right off the bat, we have a difference between D&D 5th edition and Pathfinder 2nd edition. I don't know if they did this in 1st edition. I don't have any experience with 1st edition, so I'm not going to be able to compare 1st with 2nd. But it looks like we have, instead of races, we're calling those ancestries, which I think is great. Way more probably accurate to what the game rules are, and backgrounds. It's interesting that they're paired with ancestries. I'd have to look and see if it's done that way in the 5th edition rulebook, but we'll see if Pathfinder gives more emphasis on backgrounds, where D&D, whenever I've created a character or even helped my players create characters, I always felt like background didn't really play in all that much. And maybe that's on me or on my players, but just kind of seemed like they would come up with a concept generally, and then we would just try to find the background that matched it the most. So we'll see if Pathfinder puts more of a focus on that. Classes, which I'm excited to get into, since one of the biggest reasons why I'm interested in learning Pathfinder is the increased player character options. Skills, feats, equipment, spells. Oops. And then it looks like we have a whole chapter on campaign setting. Galarian in the Age of Lost Omens. Very cool. Sounds great. Excited. Playing the game. Comprehensive rules for playing, using actions, calculating statistics. Encounters, exploration, downtime. Awesome. Game mastering. Whole 50 pages on game mastering. Very cool. Rules for setting DCs, granting rewards, environments, and hazards. Awesome. Holy crap. There is 80 plus pages, almost 90 pages of crafting and treasure, which is awesome. And I do want to reiterate here, the book in hardback. Do I have the book right here? I do. It is a big boy. Check this out. That is this is thick, and even, I mean, the PDF is huge, and it's over 600 pages of content, like minus, like not even talking appendixes or glossary or anything like that. 620 pages of rules and stuff for us to learn and run our games in, which is just awesome. I have to recenter. Okay. So awesome. More art. Awesome. This looks like some kind of arcane caster. Don't know if it's a wizard or like if I don't even know if it's some kind of arcane caster. I don't know enough about Pathfinder classes to know if it's a, version of a sorcerer, warlock or something. It's like paladin type, monk, obvi. Okay, so this is a 2-page spread. Ooh, that looks gnarly and gross. Bust like a huge beetle worm type thing busting through a stone wall with kobolds, it seems, with pickaxes. Amazing. More awesome art. Cleric fighting undead. Some flavor with some specific characters. So I'm seeing the Whispering Tyrant looks like maybe a deity god. Eridan's dead. Valoros spat out the dead god's name like a curse as he drew his sword and readied his battered shield. He's not coming back to save us this time. So they're fighting a lich. Very cool. All right. I'm not going to read every single page. That doesn't seem like a good use of our time. But I'm just going to kind of bing, bang, boom through this. My eye is immediately drawn to this sidebar. The first rule. First rule of Pathfinder is that this game is yours. Use it to tell the stories you want to tell. Be the character you want to be, and share exciting adventures with friends. If any other rule gets in the way of your fun, as long as your group agrees, you can alter or ignore it to fit your story. Thank you. Perfect. That is absolutely how I like to run my games. I'm not saying rule of cool always trumps the rules in the book. It is my job as a game master to do my best to know and understand the rules as much as possible so that I have an inkling and understanding of when it is okay and appropriate for me to bend those rules to better serve the narrative that me and the players are telling. Dice all look very the same as Dungeons and Dragons, which is great. Yeah, flow of the game, players, yeah, that all probably is pretty basic. Game master, obviously DM, dungeon master must be a very like Wizards of the Coast, Dungeons and Dragons specific thing, which makes sense. Dungeon master, D&D. Don't want to confuse the two. GMing. Gaming is for all. Whether you are the GM or a player participating in a tabletop includes social contract. Seeing the term social contract in actual like rule book just spelled out is great because it's absolutely true. The concept behind me, the game master, and my players, I always encourage, and in my own games, I in fact just recently had one, a session 0 last week with my players, where you talk about basically what that social contract should involve. So you go over options available to the players and make sure that everybody has the same expectations and desires for the game. And if they don't, lay all your cards out on the table and figure out like, okay, how do we compromise? So it's great to see the rulebook just spelling that out. Everyone is gathered together to have fun telling story. As a way to escape troubles everyday life. Be mindful of everyone at the table and what they want out of the group so everyone can have fun. Exactly what I was just saying. When a group gathers for the first time, they should talk about what they hope to experience at the table and any topics to avoid. Absolutely. Like if you're not using any safety tools like the X card or anything like that, which you should be, I do, then you at least need to make sure that everybody understands the same boundaries. If someone is uncomfortable with a specific topic, then it is the DM, GM's job to avoid that topic, and it is the player's responsibility to avoid that topic. If, I don't run games with any kind of sexual violence because that doesn't seem like that's not how I want to have fun, and that's not the type of story I want to tell, and that's not the type of story that my players have ever really wanted to tell. I would, if, but for some reason, if one of my players, if I'm trying to think, like, if for some reason that was okay with me, but one of my players said that they really didn't want to go into that territory, then we have a decision to make. Either that player doesn't play in this game group, or we all compromise and say that we're not going to, or we all understand that we're all humans here, had a fun, and we're not going to broach and return to that topic. Yeah. Everyone should agree to respect those boundaries during play. Absolutely. Game for everyone, regardless of their age, gender, race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or any other identities and life experiences. It is the responsibility of all the players, not just the GM, to make sure the table is fun and welcoming to all. Bravo, Paizo. Thank you so much. I'm sure that ruffled some feathers, but who cares? That is absolutely all fantastic. Character sheet, dice, adventure, bestiary. Okay, so they do have a separate, like, D&D, it's the monster manual. Looks like here, Pathfinder is called the bestiary, maps and miniatures. I've done both, like, heavy grid with, like, printed miniatures. I'm not a miniature collector or painter. Just I'm an adult with a very specific amount of time that I can spend to do specific things, and that's just not how I enjoy spending my time. But I've done like printed tokens before. But I have started leaning away from that more personally. But it's the same rules: a 1-inch grid, 5 feet in game. Cool. Basics of play. You have PCs, NPCs, and monsters. Level. Yes. Okay, interesting. So every time a character amasses 1,000 XP, they go up a level, gaining new abilities so that they can take on even greater challenges. First level PC might fight off against a giant rat or a group of bandits, but at 20th level, that same character might be bringing ruin to an entire city. Yes, of course. So, but it's interesting. Every time a character amasses 1,000 XP, so 0 to 1,000 XP, you go from first to second level. I'm assuming then from 1,000 to 2,000 XP, second to third level. So that means that it's up to the GM then at that point to adjust if you're doing and giving out XP on a fight to fight basis or whatever, we'll see. But it seems like it's just you have to kind of adjust, knowing that 100 XP per monster is 10% of the allotment for that level. So you kind of have to play around with it. That's interesting. I have mainly used milestone leveling in Dungeons and Dragons, but I know that there are people out there that like having that firm XP assignment and are okay with characters not being at the same progression and level. So it's cool. Ability scores. If Adobe could stop skipping every time I click, that would be awesome. Strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. So those are all the same. Physical might, agility, and ability to avoid danger. Overall health and well-being. Raw knowledge and problem solving. Wisdom's insight and ability to evaluate a situation. Charisma, charm, persuasiveness, and force personality. Cool. Ordinary folk range from 3 to 18, with 10 representing average human capabilities. High level characters have ability scores range much higher. Yeah. So then you have a modifier, same in D, all the same, similar D20. So you have ancestry, representing characters' parents and heritage, background, their upbringing, class, the majority of their aptitudes and abilities. I also have a number of feats. So obviously feats is going to be much more important in Pathfinder than in 5th edition, because feats is an optional rule that, I mean, I've always used because it introduces ways to customize characters more and more, so that the one monk in one game isn't almost, if not the exact same as another. But so feats are obviously hugely important. So elf feats can be found in the elf ancestry. So you even get feats for whatever ancestry you build. Interesting. Wizard feats grant abilities that deal with spells. So these feats are super like specific. They probably have general feats, but it's not like in 5th edition where there's a list of 50 feats and 90%, like a character can probably pick anywhere from 80 to 90% of them if you have prerequisites, but this is more like specific feats. So it looks like almost feats is almost like a art, like your classic computer RPG skill tree almost, of like picking between different ones. Cool. We'll see. Hopefully we'll see that more when we get into actual character stuff. Creating narrative. Playing the game. So it looks like we have exploration, encounters, downtime. Seem to be like if D&D has 3 pillars, then similar 3 pillars. It'll be interesting to see how exploration is played out, because in my experience I found that pillar gets skipped over a whole lot, which is one of the problems of the 5th edition ranger, that so much of that class is dependent on the DM really hex crawling or really focusing or like giving at least a decent amount of time to that exploration phase, where so many DMs just skip over it, including myself. I'll admit. That might be an upcoming change for me though, because in a new game I'm about to start running, have a ranger for the first time in a 3-person party. So it's, it'll be interesting to see how we play that out. Interesting. Okay, so we have DCs obviously, but we then have critical successes, which is not just. I mean, as far as I know, and I've never heard of this in 5th edition, or I don't even know if this is a new thing for 2nd edition Pathfinder or not. If you beat the DC by 10 or more, that's referred to as a critical success. 10 or less than the DC is a critical failure. You also score critical successes by rolling a 20 on the die, or a 1 for a critical failure. Not all checks have a special effect. Such results should be treated just like an ordinary success or failure instead. Okay, so it's not like some DMs end up giving like just automatic successes. So a critical success does not necessarily mean automatic success. I think I'm interpreting that right. And I normally don't do like a fumble table or like horrible things that happen to you if you roll a -1. I like to tell heroic stories where heroes don't have as many immediate fumbles like that. But, I mean, always optional. So, in this example, a DC of crossing a river was 16. Interesting DC. I normally just do like 12, 14, or 12, 15, 18, 20. This is generally how I kind of like if I'm coming up with a DC on the spot. You end up getting a total of 26 on your roll. Is considered a critical success because it was 10 or more than the DC. So your character swims quickly across the river, drenched but unharmed. Had you gotten a result less than 26 but equal to or greater than 16, you would have made it halfway across. And then if it had been less than 16, you might have been swept downriver. Okay, cool. So you have a modifier and a proficiency bonus. Proficiency is a simple way of assessing your character's general level of training and aptitude for a given task. Interesting. Untrained, trained, expert, master, and legendary. Each rank grants a different proficiency bonus. If you're untrained at a statistic, your proficiency bonus is 0. Interesting. Okay, so they do proficiency totally different. So like in 5th edition, your proficiency bonus, if you're just proficient or not, we'll speak generically and not, talk about things like expertise in 5th edition. That really only comes up for like some rogues and some bards, I believe, off the top of my head. But you have proficiency bonus here where you basically have 5 ranks going 0 to 10, or 0 to 8, excuse me, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. So I wonder if you, like, depending on what class or background you get, some might be untrained, you might be trained in some things. I wonder if expert is the max out you get at the start. Still it's a +4, which is, twice what you would get at a level 1 character in 5th edition if you're an expert in it. But that's a great way of displaying how it's just so much more varied. And you can be way more tuned to exactly the kind of character that you want to create. Exploration, encounters, roll initiative, 6-second rounds, turn. You can use up to 3 actions. Simple things like drawing a sword, moving a short distance, opening a door, swinging a sword use a single action. There are also activities that use more than a single action to perform. One common activity in the game is casting a spell, which usually uses 2 actions. So no more or no move, bonus action. You might have react. Yeah, it looks like we have reactions in the next paragraph, but this is more like something I see in RPGs or any kind of RPG, a lot of JRPGs or a top-down kind of D&D similar role-playing game, similar top-down view of like your Pillars of Eternity or what's another one? Divinity Original Sin. I think it's Divinity Original Sin. Where you just kind of have a number of actions. So you have 3 per turn. Casting a spell uses 2, which then gives you another action to do something minor, but I'm not attaching that term minor since I think maybe Pathfinder 1st edition had like major minor actions. Now it's just 3 actions and certain things take a certain amount of time. Cool. Strike action is what the attack action is called strike. Against armor class of the creature you're attacking. Yeah. Add a modifier to this roll based on your proficiency rank and the type of attack you're using, ability scores, and any other bonuses. Proficiency rank in the armor they're wearing and their dexterity modifier. Deals damage if it hits. Rolling a critical success results in the attack dealing double damage. And now critical successes mean that if you rolled a 10 or more than the AC, I would assume. That I might have to double check because I think when we were talking about critical successes earlier, that was specifically beating a DC by 10 or more is called a critical success. I don't know if that applies to armor class. It doesn't specifically say yet. So that's a question I have is AC considered a DC re 10 or more for critical success? Okay. Keep track of that. You can use more than one strike action on your turn, but each additional attack after the first becomes less accurate, reflected by a multiple attack penalty that starts at -10, increases to -5 on the second, -10 on the third. Many ways to reduce this penalty, and it resets at the end of your turn. So it's no longer a class feature that you get to attack or strike multiple times in the same turn. Everybody can do it. It's just that if you do it without some kind of maybe like class feat or background feat or ability or whatever they call it here in Pathfinder, if you do it without that, you take these pretty big penalties. Which really just means that like a more martial focused where you can multi-attack is just training, and less like I all of a sudden am able to fit in multiple like sword strikes with my fighter or rogue when the bard just can't. Like that makes sense. Target of a magical lightning bolt or freezing breath of a fearsome white dragon. You are called on to attempt a saving throw. Saving throw is a check attempted against the DC of the spell. 3 types of saving throws. A character's proficiency in each says a great deal about what they can endure. Fortitude, reflex, and will. Interesting, and I like that a lot too. So you only have 3 saving throws. $5 says they're related to 2 of your, like each one is related to one or both of your an attribute somehow. Where like will probably covers charisma, wisdom, reflex, dexterity, intelligence, fortitude, strength, constitution, probably. Which gets you around the whole like intelligence save or strength, like, or maybe constitution save isn't a whole lot in D&D 5th edition. This kind of gives you, it reduces down from where like 5th edition has a saving throw for each attribute, reduces it down to 3 so that you don't feel super hamstrung by like you having a really poor, like one really bad attribute, if I'm correct. More conditions. 0 hit points, false conscious, and may die. Downtime. Okay. Alignment. Ancestry, armor class, attack background. Bonuses, penalties, class condition. Currency, gold, silver. And it's just 1 to 10 ratio. Cool. Feat and his ability you select for your character due to their ancestry, class, background, general training, or skill training. And some feats grant the ability to use special actions. So I mean, like, it seems like if I had a bet, it would be, instead of having a set class ability that every rogue at level 2 gets, you probably get access to more feats that let you get to pick how you want to specialize, which is awesome. Initiative. Okay. Level. Monsters, hazards, diseases, and poisons have levels ranging from -1 to 30 that measure the danger they pose. Item level is usually within 0 to 20, but sometimes higher. Spells have levels ranging from 1st to 10th. We only go to 9th in 5th edition. Measure their power, NPC, perception, proficiency, rarity. Common, uncommon, rare. Unique. Cool. Role-playing round. Saving throw, skills. Bead spelled. Trait is a keyword that conveys additional information about a rules element, such as a school of magic or rarity. Often a trait indicates how other rules interact with ability, creatures, items, or another rule element that has that trait. Interesting. So we need to kind of keep a lookout for traits and see, like, are they just tags or do they come into play mechanically somehow? Might have to take a break and come back to finish this video in a second. Skipping past this example play using this book. Aha. Single action, 2 action, 3 action activities, reaction, free action. Sweet. That's awesome. Few special activities such as spells you can cast in an instant can be performed by spending a free action or a reaction. All tasks that take longer than a single turn are activities. If an activity is meant to be done during exploration, it has the exploration trait. An activity that takes a day or more of commitment that can only be done during downtime has the downtime trait. Beautiful. That makes sense. All right. Reading rules. Hundreds of elements. Invoke character often has special rules that allow them to do two things most other characters can't. So this totally makes sense and is really my preferred kind of game design method, and I see it more with something like Evil Hat's Fate Core, my preferred like narrative non-crunchy game, rather than something like D&D, where everybody has the same amount of things and the same access to things, but it is the character's abilities give them either exceptions or additions to the standard level of things, which I just think makes it means that everybody kind of learns the same basic game, and then whenever you play like a different class, you're learning on top of instead of. Obviously, something like spell casting is still probably like if you go from a magicless fighter to a wizard, that's still a huge jump in like learning different things. But I bet that a new player playing Pathfinder, ends up learning more Pathfinder than just their character versus 5th edition, which is that's just my gut feeling. Regardless of the game mechanic they convey, rule elements are always presented in the form of a stat block, summary of rules necessary to bring the monster, character, item, or other rule elements to life during play. Ancestry section of chapter 2 contains rules for each of the game's 6 core ancestries. So there's only 6 ancestries. Not a ton, but I have a feeling that there's so much customization inside the ancestries that it's not a problem. So here's the general stat block. Actions, reactions, and free actions each have the corresponding icon next to the name. Activities that take longer than a turn emit the icons. And it seems like from the previous page that they have a trait. It looks exactly like almost like a tag in a e-commerce store or something like that. Very cool. Action feat name. This would take 1 action. It would have a level. It has a trait, prerequisites, a frequency, a limit on how many times within a given, it can be used within a different time, trigger, and requirements. Cool. If the rules in action explains what the effect is or what you must roll to determine the effect, if it's a feat that modifies an existing action or grants a special effect, that benefit is explained here. Any special qualities of the rule are explained in this section. Usually this section appears in feats you can select more than once, explaining what happens when you do. Cool. Character creation. I imagine this is probably very similar to 5th edition. Character sheet looks massive. Strength, dexterity, constitution. See, yep. So dexterity is added to your character's AC and reflex saving throws. Constitution's added to your hit points and fortitude saving throws. And then your wisdom modifier to your perception and will saving throws. So I was a little off in assuming that they covered 2. Like, I was thinking maybe your fortitude is either your strength or constitution, whichever one's higher. It's just constitution. So, but that totally works, and totally makes sense. So there's no necessarily a save dedicated or based off of your intelligence, charisma, or strength. Interesting. Each player, I'm always interested in what a designer chooses to pull out in a section like this. Like, what is so important that it gets its kind of own standalone highlighted section. Each player takes a different approach to creating characters. Some want a character who will fit well in the story. Others look for a combination of abilities that complement each other mechanically. You might combine these 2 approaches. There is no wrong way. We don't care if you're a min-maxer or if you're a story-focused role player. This game is for everybody. When you turn the page, you'll see a graphic representation of ancestries and classes that provide at-glance information for players looking to make the most of their starting ability scores. Okay, so they're going to give us the highlights that would quickly allow you to kind of pick, like, you know, if an ancestor gives me a bonus to strength, what are the strength-based classes so that I can maximize on those? Ooh, there's ability boosts and flaws. Yes, we love ability flaws. Class key ability score. Ability score used to calculate the potency if they're many class abilities. Cool. Characters receive an ability boost in that ability score when you choose their class. The thing I hate the most about character building in 5th edition is that the class you choose has no bearing on any of your attributes, really. It's all determined by your race and yes, your race. And I guess background doesn't give you a ability score bonus. But like, just because you pick barbarian, you don't automatically get a +1 to strength or constitution, if I'm remembering that correctly. Okay, yes, just double checked the D&D Player's Handbook. Class does not give you an ability score, which I think is so stupid because really the idea is, even at level 1, you are not a commoner who got handed a longsword and now all of a sudden you get really angry. Level 1 adventurers are still a step up from your commoner, your level 0s, and that represents you accomplishing something inside, like with your character doing something. So, like, you don't all of a sudden become level 1 on you're at your first session. You know, you've been level 1 for a time. At least that's how I kind of imagine it in my head. And so the fact that you actually get a ability score bonus based on your chosen class represents that training that you've gone through to be the class that you are. Thank you, Pathfinder. Character's background also affects their ability scores, though there is more flexibility from backgrounds. There's more flexibility in ability boosts from backgrounds than there is in those from classes. So I have a feeling that your background gives you like a +1 to options versus like a +2 to a single thing that gives you a little bit more flexibility. Sweet. All right, here we go. Can I open... I can't open this up into 2-page, I don't think. Or can I? I can back out of... full screen here real quick and do 2-page view. If I go to full screen, it backs me out of 2-page viewing. Okay, so we'll just do this real quick. Yeah. So we have 12 classes, right? Yeah. 12 classes and 6 ancestries. Druid, fighter. So we have Alchemist is obviously something we don't have in 5th edition. They basically just added it with the Alchemist, or not the Alchemist, the Artificer, one of the subclasses as Alchemist similar. Everything else basically looks the same, and then a champion versus a paladin. Other classes are the same classes, though, it looks like, unless I'm just totally whiffing on something. But I think I'm right. Dwarf, elf, gnome, goblin, halfling, human. Also interesting that gnome and halfling are both chosen. I know that that's kind of a sticky point with some 5th edition dungeon masters and folks, just because they seem very similar. But at least in the art, there is a distinction where halfling is your Tolkien hobbit, and gnome is a little more different. That's not good English. Goblin, though. Yeesh. Dwarves are short, stocky people who are often stubborn, fierce, and devoted. Ability boost, you get Constitution, Wisdom, and Free. And ability flaw to Charisma. Interesting. Elf, tall, slender, long-lived people with strong tradition of art and magic. Dexterity, Intelligence, Free. Ability flaws, Constitution. Gnome, short and hardy folk, unquenchable curiosity, and eccentric habits. Constitution, Charisma, Free boosts, Strength flaw. Short, scrappy, energetic people who have spent millennium aligned and feared. Dexterity, Charisma bonus. Interesting. I don't know if I would have pinned that immediately. I would have assumed a Charisma flaw, but maybe that would be too, like, on the nose, too, like, don't want to say that just because they're goblins and don't look as humanoid as the others. Like, they always got green skin, reptilian teeth, big ears, like, different colored eyes. Just because they look different shouldn't mean that they have charisma. Bad Zach. Halfling, short, adaptable people who exhibit remarkable curiosity and humor. Dexterity, wisdom, so another strength flaw, which is cool. Humans, diverse, some as... Interesting, I wonder if half-orcs and half-elves are, like, almost lumped into humans somehow, like, underneath that. Does that make sense? And that's why there's not those ancestries separated out, where there seems to be fewer ancestries in the 5th edition Player's Handbook. 2 of free ability boosts and no flaw. So they kind of make up for... So everybody has a net positive 2. Cool. Alchemist throws alchemical bombs and drinks concoctions of their own making. Key ability score, intelligence. And a reminder, we have an asterisk here. If that thing... You know what? We'll just go back to full screen and we can bounce between the 2 pages if we need to. A character receives an ability boost to their class's key ability score. So an intelligence-based alchemist throws bombs, drinks concoctions of their own making. So they throw bombs, drink potions. Constitution is probably a secondary ability for everybody. Barbarian, I love this art for a barbarian. Absolutely, this person is absolutely a barbarian, but is not what you think of when you think of a barbarian. You think of... I mean, honestly, you think of Grog from Critical Role as a barbarian, most likely. Barbarian flies into a rage on the battlefield, smashing foes with abandon. So it seems similar to 5th edition. Strength bonus, Constitution, Dexterity, yeah. Bard, Skilled performances and secrets of the occult enable the bard to distract foes and inspire allies. So inspire being killed, key there. Skilled makes me think that maybe they have a ton of proficiencies. And I'm super interested by the performances. Like, I wonder if there's some flexibility there and if you could do non-musical performances. We'll see. Like, is there a singing option? Like, are you required to have a musical instrument as like part of spell casting or something like that? Occult makes me super interested too. Warrior dedicated to a deity. Champion uses divine power to enhance the abilities to protect allies. It's super interesting that it's a champion versus a paladin in 5th edition. I also don't know where that diverged. I don't know enough. I've never played D&D 3.5. I've never looked at Pathfinder 1st edition. This is my first time looking at Pathfinder 2nd edition. So I wonder if that difference, like, was Pathfinder 1st edition a champion? Interesting. Strength, charisma, constitution. Cleric. Super cool cleric art. Super dope. Very cool. That sword is badass. Calls on the power of a deity to cast spells and heal allies or harm foes. Wisdom. Druid. Magic of the natural world to bolster allies and strike down enemies. Wisdom. Fighter. Master martial. Dexterity or strength. Sure, so you can have I'm really interested in what Pathfinder did with the Ranger. Monk wields the secrets of martial arts, dexterity or strength. Yep. Ranger is a master of using their surroundings, traps, and animal allies to harry enemies. Okay. Dexterity or strength. Constitution, wisdom. Everybody has Constitution as a secondary ability. There's no way to get around that, I think. Like, hit points are just so important. You have to tie it to something, but inevitably whatever you tie it to is going to be incredibly important. Rogue is multi-talented. Probably tells me that Rogue and Bard both probably have a lot of skill proficiencies. Master of Skullduggery. Strikes when enemies less expect it. Dexterity or other. Interesting. Sorcerer's magical might flows from their blood and manifests as fantastic spells. Charisma-based arcane spellcaster. Wisdom, arcane spellcaster. Charisma, intelligence. Cool. Wizard, scholar. Yeah. So, I mean, other than alchemist being new, none of these classes super on face value, nothing is very different from 5th edition. You can see the animal companion, or possibly maybe something that a druid turns into here in the druid art background. Ranger is like well equipped. Looks like he has ranged and melee. Fighter, yeah, all this rogue is dope. Very cool. Drow, like similar, like underground, underdark rogue. Yeesh, that is a lot on the spell. Oof. Okay, we're gonna ancestry feats, skill feats, general feats, class feats, bonus feats. So there is no set ability, it looks like. Maybe, so there's a feature, but I wonder if you get an option or if everybody has 2 first level features. But you get a feat at every level, which is dope. You get skill feat from a background and then every 2. Ancestry feat every 4. So, I mean, general feat 3, 7, 11, 15, 19. Man, that is a lot of customization, gang. A lot of customization. Did I miss any callouts? No. Optional voluntary flaw. Sometimes it's fun to play a character with a major flaw. Yes. Even if not playing an ancestry that imposes one. You may elect to take 2 additional ability flaws when applying the ability boosts and flaws from your ancestry. If you do, You can apply one additional free ability boost. You can't apply more than one ability flaw to the same ability score during this step unless you already apply both of the additional ability flaws to a score that is already receiving an ability boost during this step. In this case, the first ability flaw cancels the ability boost. The second ability flaw decreases the score by 2. So wait, do you have to decrease 2 scores by 2 to get 1 boost? It's interesting that a boost is just automatically considered +2 instead of a boost equaling just 1. For example, a dwarf normally gets an ability boost to Constitution and Wisdom along with a flaw to Charisma. You could apply one ability flaw each to Intelligence and Strength, or you could apply both to Wisdom. You could not apply either flaw to Charisma, though, because it is already receiving a flaw. So you couldn't just make one spell or one ability your mega dump. Especially, is a flaw automatically a +2 or +1? Is the... wow. Well, so... need to... so we found those saving throws. It directly relates to your con, dex, and whiz scores. And then we have a ability flaw equals -2. Boost equals +2? Question mark? We'll find that out, hopefully. At first level, your character has 15 gold pieces to spend on armor, weapons, and other basic equipment. Your character's class lists the type of weapons which they are trained or better. So, no default equipment. You just get to spend starting wealth, which is an optional rule in 5th edition. Calculate modifiers. Perception modifier is equal to your proficiency bonus and perception plus your wisdom modifier. A lot of... you could be... if you specialized in that, you could be real potent in perception, which makes sense. It's so far, it seems like Pathfinder is giving the ability to be really, really good at the things you want to be really good at. Some classes can learn to cast a few focus spells, but the Bard, Cleric, Druid, Sorcerer, and Wizard all gain spellcasting. If your character's class grants spells, you should take time during Step 7, record class details, to learn about the spells they know and how to cast them. The 4th page of the character sheet provides space to know your character's magic tradition and the proficiency rate for spell attack rolls and spell DCs. It also gives ample space to record the spells in your character's repertoire or spellbook, so it looks like they might do a... Pathfinder does a similar, either you have access to your whole list, your class's whole list of spells, like, is it clerics and druids that have lists, and then you prepare certain ones. Wizards, you have to pick from a spellbook and then prepare out of your spellbook. And then other spellcasters, like your sorcerer, you just get to learn certain... when you don't have to prepare those. Okay. There's an abbreviation that reminds you of the ability score. For each skill in your character you're trained to add your proficiency bonus to that skill, typically +3 for a first level character. Wait, I thought it was... didn't we talk about this? Where proficiency... huh. That's interesting. Can I zoom in? I can. Checking out the skills. Acrobatics, Arcana. I thought it was crafting, new. Deception, diplomacy. Probably a renaming of something. Blank lore. I wonder how specific that is. Interesting. Medicine, nature, occultism. I really want to know the background of like calling out the occult specifically. With like the bard had it in their class description, it is a specific skill separate from arcana and religion, which totally makes sense. I would assume a sorcerer, maybe not a sorcerer. Oh, you know what? Is there a warlock class? No. There's not a like. Interesting. Okay. I would have guessed that like your warlock would probably like have a proficiency in occult, but there's not one. There's not a arcane caster that is dependent. There's not a class dependent on like a patron or something. You have clerics, obviously. That's kind of it. Cool. Okay. Alignment. GM is arbiter of questions about how specific actions might affect your character's alignment. If you play a champion, your character's alignment must be one allowed for their deity and cause. If you play a character, or if you play a cleric, your character's alignment must be allowed. Interesting. So there is some limitations on alignment based on, but it's basically specific on deity. So it's not saying that you can't be an evil cleric. You can be an evil cleric. You just have to be worshiping an evil deity. Yep. Well, that makes sense. Age. Look at this. Gender and pronouns. Record your character's gender, if applicable. And their pronouns on the third page of the character sheet. Thank you. Hero points. This is new. Character usually begins each game session with 1 hero point. You can gain additional hero points during sessions by performing heroic deeds or devising clever strategies. Character can use hero points to gain certain benefits, such as staving off death or re-rolling a d20. So it seems like DM inspiration, different than Bard's inspiration in 5th edition, but a DM's inspiration, except they have intelligently given it a different name so that it does not confuse with something else, and you automatically start a game session with 1 hero point. So like in my 5th edition game that I run out of my house, I have a home, like house rule, where if you bring snacks and or drinks for the table, you automatically start the game with inspiration. Here I would do that, but you get an additional hero point, so you would start with 2 if you brought snacks. Very cool. Armor class. 10 plus your character's dexterity modifier, plus their proficiency bonus with their armor, plus that armor's item bonus to AC. So you could... I bet there's a huge AC possible in Pathfinder. Maximum bulk determines how much weight they can carry comfortably. If they carry a total amount of bulk that exceeds 5 plus their strength modifier, they are encumbered. You can't, period, carry a total of bulk that exceeds 10 plus their strength modifier. The bulk your character is carrying equals the sum of all of their items. Keep in mind that 10 light items make up 1 bulk. So I have never run a game with encumbrance rules in D&D 5th edition because it's one level of housekeeping that I've not been willing to do and my players aren't interested in, or they have not been interested in to a point. But Pathfinder is inherently, seemingly, maybe not with 2nd edition, maybe not. But the word on the street is that Pathfinder is more crunchy, has more math and more numbers, more calculations to do than D&D 5th edition. So if I'm able to sell a game group and they're interested in something a little more math heavy like Pathfinder in general, maybe that's when I can try out things like bulk, encumbrance, whatever you want to call it. Sample character. Get that character video. Each time your character reaches 1,000 XP, Their level increases by 1. On your character sheet, indicate the character's new level beside their name of the class and deduct 1,000 XP from their XP total. So it's not like 1,000 to 2,000. It's just from 0 to 1,000. When you hit 1,000, you level up, and then you just erase XP off of your character sheet. If you have any XP points left after this, record them. They count towards your next level. And there's no, so that you get to carry over, and there's no like penalty, which is interesting. Like, it's probably just a level of math that you don't want to introduce to like penalize the player. But for instance, let's say like a character had 900 XP. They just finished a like a encounter or something that ended up taking them from, they got 9, or they started at 9, they got 300 XP. Takes them to 1,200 XP, 1,000 points, they would go back down to 0 and then carry over 200. But in reality, like a next level up character would probably get less experience from the same encounter, but there's no penalty to that, which is, again, just probably something that you don't want to have to make the GM do. But again, this 1,000 XP per level is interesting, and an interesting way of doing it. Increase total hit points by the number indicated on your class. Character gains all the abilities listed for that level, including new abilities specific to your class and additional benefits. All characters gain 4 ability boosts at 5th level and every level after. So at 5, 10, etc., you get 4 ability boosts. Now, we don't know yet if a boost is +2 or +1, because it's they haven't spelled it out yet. But we saw -2 earlier, so I'm just kind of curious. It'll be super interesting. Everything is probably. You can perform the steps in the leveling up process, whichever order you want, for the purposes of fulfilling prerequisites for certain things. Cool. At a bare minimum, your proficiency bonuses all increase by 1 just because you've gained a level. So your AC, attack rolls, perception, saving throw, skill modifiers, spell attack rolls, and class DC all increase by at least 1. But earlier it's a proficiency bonus. Okay. So there's a generic proficiency bonus. There is a skills proficiency bonus. And then you have your ability score modifiers. So if you are an expert at perception, well, let's not use perception because it seems specific, like kind of different. Athletics. You're an expert at athletics that gives you a +4. You're level 1, so it sounds like you have a +3 just for being there. So that's a +3, so you're at 7 now. And then let's say you rolled really well when determining your scores, and you are a elven monk and have a +3. You're already at +10 for athletics, assuming that like you are, going after the max. That's at level 1. That's insane. Like if you're proficient in something, a skill in D&D 5th edition, you might have +5, +6 if you rolled really well and ordered your ability scores correctly and picked the right class. But a +10 right off the bat is crazy and awesome. Ooh, look at this. This looks like a Christmas, like a holiday decorated Ewok village. But that's super cool. Multi-tiered with like windows and shades. Very cool. Love it. Okay. that was chapter 1. I think this video has gone on long enough. So that was our first look at chapter 1 of the Pathfinder Core Rulebook. Honestly, like, this seems super fun. I think I'm, again, coming from 5th edition, very few things seem totally new. Everything makes sense so far, and really, I'm super excited about the prospect of a potential character that we might make. When we come back, we're going to be looking at Ancestries, Chapter 2, Ancestries and Backgrounds, and we will probably start making our first character. Filling out a character sheet as we go. I always find that helps me figuring out a class, and figuring out a what am I saying? Figuring out a new game. But anyway, thanks for watching. Leave a comment if you have questions or wanted to point out your favorite thing from Chapter 1 of the 2nd edition Pathfinder book. We'll be back with Chapter 2 really soon. And you can always find me on Twitter at ZachHall_. Thanks for watching. See you soon.